Humanity Matters.
Hello, my name is Arnie Herz, and welcome to this podcast titled Habits of a Whole Heart. I'm your host, and this is being aired on HMTV. Today, I'm very happy to have my dear friend, AJ Reisman, who is my guest. AJ is my neighbor, and we go for frequent walks. And one thing I'll say about AJ is that we always have the most thoughtful and deep conversations. AJ is very well read, and he poses phenomenal questions. One thing also about AJ is that he has a daily blog with tremendous wisdom, short blog posts of great clarity and wisdom that's very meaningful for our lives. He also is the author of a book, children's book, called Build Higher. So I'm very happy to have AJ here today with me. AJ, thank you for joining. And I also want to note that today is May 22nd, and it is now 11:25 in the morning in New York. And we woke up this morning to very tragic news of the murder of two innocent souls who were killed outside of an event in Washington, D.C., hosted by the American Jewish Committee, of which I'm very, very involved. And this was an event called the Young Diplomats program for people who are in the diplomatic community, not just from the Israeli consulate, but from all different consulates, on how to facilitate humanitarian aid into Gaza and how to help create a world that is beneficial to all peoples of the Middle East. And ironically and tragically, an insane person, I hope insane, but maybe not, maybe radicalized to such a point to believe that it would be okay to kill this young couple who were just about to get engaged and destroy their lives. It's very tragic. And as we walked in today to the Holocaust Memorial Tolerance Center here in Glen Cove, Long Island, and we see what hatred and intolerance and delusion created this Holocaust, we still see ripples of this playing itself out into the Jewish world. So I'd like to dedicate this episode to the memory of Sarah Milgram and Yaron Leshinsky. May their names be for a blessing, and it is upon us, the survivors, to bring greater light into this world, to help create a world that is free of such hatred and intolerance and violence. Thank you, AJ, for being here.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. I was heartbroken when I read about it last night. And at the same time, coming into here this morning to this place of tolerance, realizing and reading the events of last night, we'll be exiting this building. This young couple was exiting the event and they were gunned down. You and I are both Jewish, and I know it's not going to happen, but there's fear that it could happen to me, to a family member, to anyone in my community. So, but at the same time, I do feel some solace in walking into the walls of this building. And what did we see? We saw students from high schools, local schools, learning about the Holocaust, learning about intolerance. So hopefully these events become less and less, but yeah, these two individuals, as you were mentioning, they were about to get engaged. I was reading about their lives, and they were on the precipice of something great. They were going to start a family, and now to your book, to all that you're talking about, a whole life, a whole heart. They can't do that anymore, and it's tragic to learn this news.
What was also interesting is you were sharing in the car on the way over here about Sarah, who grew up in Kansas City. And so if you want to share.
Yeah, so unbelievable. In the Times of Israel wrote about both of them, and these individuals were unbelievable people. So Sarah, for example, she grew up in Kansas City suburbs. And as a teenager, when the white supremacists shot and killed 3 people at the Jewish institutions in that city, she was in high school. And she was active in responding after swastikas were painted on her high school walls. And she said, "I worry about going to my synagogue, and now I have to worry about the safety at my school, and that shouldn't be a thing," she told local news at the time. And she wrote on her LinkedIn page, "My passion lies at the intersection of peace building, religious engagement, and environmental work." Her husband-to-be also wrote, "I'm an ardent believer in the vision that was outlined in the Abraham Accords and believe that expanding the circle of peace with our Arab neighbors and pursuing regional cooperation is in the best interest of the state of Israel and the Middle East as a whole. To this end, I advocate for the interfaith dialogue and intercultural understanding." And these are the people that were killed by an extremist. Can you believe that?
Well, I do believe it, unfortunately. I think this is, it goes to the core of this book. This is the history of humanity. Right? We know right away from the Bible, you have Cain and Abel, and there's a murder that takes place. So what is it about human beings that lead themselves to murder? And so much murder that takes place is based on a belief that the murdering is necessary in order to save society. This is not someone evil who knows they're doing something evil. This is someone evil who believes they're doing something holy. We see this with the Holocaust. There was a firm, absolute belief that in German society that Hitler promulgated and sold and brainwashed and got buy-in by millions of Germans and Europeans, that the holy work was to kill the Jews. And we still see this playing itself out in social media. We see this in right-wing extremism. We see it in left-wing extremism. We see it in Islamic extremism. This holy crusade to kill. And this is what is so challenging and so problematic.
Yeah, and I mean, to tie that into your work and your book, right? You talk about Cain and Abel, which was a long time ago. And we like part of the origin of this, right? We can go back even further. Our ancestors are monkey beginnings, right? If you there's aggression in the animal world. There's tribal warfare. But I think what separates us as humans is we have a higher level of intelligence, and we could use our wisdom to combat that and to understand each other. And we also have language. Monkeys have language, but it's a much more rudimentary type of language. And we can have conversations. We can educate each other.
One of the core elements of Habits of a Whole Heart is understanding that we have 2 points of consciousness. There's the reality of you and me. There's me and there's you, and there's the microphone and the camera and the listener. So we live in a very multifaceted world. And when we're living in a multifaceted world, we come to understand there's me and everything other than me. And we also understand, because of time, that my time is limited. There was a time I didn't exist, and there's a time I'm not going to exist. And the life that we have is a brief, as Shakespeare says, a brief candle. It's a brief moment, or in its Tehillim, in the Psalms, it's withering grass. It's temporary. Nothing lasts forever. And when we face the existential reality of our lives and the separateness, it could bring out a lot of selfishness and self-survival, both within ourselves, and then we form groups that form that as well. But at the same time, what the mystics have said for thousands of years, great religious leaders, and what science has now proven is that while you and I are separate, from a quantum perspective, there's nothing but waves of energy, particles of energy, waves of energy that are completely connected, and that there is one energetic system that pervades the entire universe. And that the only reason why you appear different than me is because the eyes that we have only are able to pick up a certain wavelength, and so it creates the image of you versus me. But if you had quantum microscope, you wouldn't see you would, or me, you would see nothing but shimmering energy if we looked at it from a different perspective. So this reality of one energy system is real. The second thing is we also know from Einstein's theory of relativity that time is a construct, that if we're moving at a certain speed, there is no such thing as time. Time breaks down. We move into an eternal, infinite reality that exists in this world. So we're both simultaneously limited in time and space, and we are beyond time and infinite. And the essence of spiritual development and meditation is to tap into that infinite self. And when we can tap into that infinite self and realize that we're something so much more, we now bring this into our day-to-day lives and integrate this in. And when I talk about a whole heart and habits of a whole heart, it means integrating my lower self with my higher self. And when we have that integration, we become whole within ourselves. And then we also, the second level of wholeness is not just this within ourselves, it's with other people. They have the me and the us. And so that's my overall philosophy. And one of the things I like to explore here in this podcast is, what does wholeness mean for you? And as we interact with the day-to-day realities of life, where is it that we're drawn into fracture, separation, alienation, to such a degree that it could lead to murder? But for most of humanity, we're not murdering people, but we're filled with anxiety, and we're filled with anger, and we're filled with angst, and we're filled with upset. It's at a different point of the spectrum. How do we move to this sense of wholeness? What is it that we need to heal? What is it that we need to learn and need to do?
Yeah, it's funny. So, last night I was lucky enough to attend the Knicks playoff game against the Pacers, the first game. And I was with my daughter and my wife, and the energy of New York City. And it was an amazing experience. And I started thinking about how lucky I am to be here, to be part of this. But then, I also considered, is this all a trick of marketing? There's a lot of marketing dollars that go behind this, and how they make the audience have fun. These cameras go around, panning to different people, singing songs, having fun, jumping up and down, shouting, "Let's go Knicks." They show celebrities there all the time, and it makes you feel special. But at the end of the day, maybe that's really just a trick that they're trying to deceive us, and we need to feel special by sitting in our backyard and playing basketball in our backyard with friends or with our daughter, and there's no crowd there. How do we find that feeling of joy, that same feeling of joy that maybe I was deceived in feeling, in our own backyards?
That's a very good question. And I think it's the real difference between pleasure and joy. So much of the way we're wired from a neurochemical perspective is to experience pleasure, dopamine hits, and various different neurochemicals that are constantly playing out in our system. So we're constantly looking for the pleasure, but that's different than joy. Joy for me is a byproduct that comes about when I'm feeling whole, when I'm feeling aligned. And just being able to sit in the backyard, looking at nature, or playing basketball with my son, or just spending time with my kids or family members, is a sense of ease and quiet and the joy emanates from that. It's very different than a pleasure-oriented focus. And I do think we're being manipulated. I think that so much of social media, so much of advertising, and so much of Western culture is a manipulation to give us hits of pleasure that is helping us escape the pain and the superficiality of the lives that we're living.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, sadly, we do need these wake-up calls. In death, a lot of people find life. There's this famous quote that a happy person wants 1,000 things, and a sick person wants one thing, just to get better. So I completely agree. How can we wake up every day and realize these moments and understand what reality is?
So how do you? Because you're just now pivoting to, this podcast is called Habits of a Whole Heart. And it's based on my belief that we have tastes of wholeness throughout our lives. So if you can go back and really think about what is it that's bringing the wholeness, and then how do we habituate that? So you just asked the perfect question. How do you do this on a daily basis? What's the ritual? What's the habit that you develop to enable that to happen so you keep the perspective on what matters? So for example, going back, I was very excited the Knicks were playing. And then when I found out about the murder of these two innocent angels, I couldn't care less about the Knicks. The Knicks just don't matter. We think it matters. We're caught up into thinking it matters, but it just doesn't matter. If you're on your deathbed, or if you've lost someone, it just doesn't matter. And you realize 95% of what we think matters just doesn't matter. And yet it's taking up 95%, if not more, of our time. So this is the crux of what we're trying to get at, to wake up to what is essential. One of the things that was circulating at AJC is everyone is going to be working from home today, and that we have to give the community a tighter hug. How do we give the community a tighter hug every single day? Understanding the fact that nothing's happened that day is a great blessing. Why does it take the tragedy to have to wake us up? But anyway, what's the ritual to keep us where we keep this front and center in our mind to live life in the most meaningful way possible?
Well, yeah, luckily we're in spring for me, and sometimes we get to go on amazing walks together. But for me, part of it is thinking about living with the seasons, being more at one with nature, and that translates to a lot of different areas of your life. First of all, the simplest one is getting out and seeing what's happening in nature. Every day in spring there's a new surprise, a new flower comes about. Green is somewhere that was dark, that was brown before. Color is around us all the time if we just look for it. So walks are really great. But I think that there's other habits that we can incorporate about living seasonally as well. It's not just walks and seeing the seasons, it's eating seasonally as well. Same thing, we're talking about marketing and the trick of marketing. Today, you can go to a grocery store in the winter and you can get strawberries, blueberries, but we live in New York. Strawberries and blueberries don't grow here in the winter yet. I guess it's going to get warmer from global warming, but that is coming from places far away, and by the time they get here, they're not really ripe anymore. And at the same time, studies show that a lot of these foods are 1/30th of the nutrients of what they were 20, 30 years ago. Because again, there's dollars behind it and pesticides that have taken this way. So it's not easy to live this whole life when.
So what do you do though? Like you talked about, you have to remind yourself every day the sacredness of life. Like I get eating, that's nice and it's important. But does that make you feel connected to your higher self? Does that make you, like, what is the routine of the habit to keep front and center how precious your life is? And again, I'm like if you talk about a walk, do you do a walk on a daily basis? What are the habits that you've implemented in your life to keep you reflective and thoughtful?
Well, I think the first one is around journaling, which goes into my daily blog. And it's really just about noticing things that happen in the world. A lot of the times the things that I write about are observations, and some of them are beautiful observations and how they impacted me or my family, or just something that I learned that's just inspiring. So that's one thing that's been extremely effective. And then when you write, you start to notice things and write like you think like you write. And it's this kind of reflexive thing that you start to have this more of a mindful observation of things, because you start fleshing things out deeper on a regular basis and thinking about them. You notice that a conversation that you and I are having, that there's multiple facets of the conversation, not just going back to what we were talking about, the monkey brain, not just what our monkey brain tells us is happening.
Well, so I think you said something in there that I want to draw out. It's not just that you're journaling every single day and you're blogging about it. What's essential, you're looking for that which is beautiful, profound, uplifting, transformative. And that, to me, is the habit that you've implemented, is that it's the habit of seeing the best, it's seeing the highest, seeing the transformation in the world. The fact that you're noticing nature and you're noticing the leaves change colors and you're going out into nature and you're pointing that out. And you realize the mystery of life and the beauty of nature, and you're connecting yourself to something outside of yourself, connecting yourself to this godliness that permeates nature, is quite extraordinary and powerful. And so this is the habit. It's the habit of seeing positive. And I see when I'm walking with you, you're always looking, what's my next topic that I'm going to write about? You're not pointing out the ugly. Of course, you're aware of the evil that happens in the world. But even with respect to this murder that we just talked about, the double murder of these two innocent souls, you were searching for what was positive about what their lives were about. And you're amplifying that message. And in amplifying that message of what they were about, it inspires us and others to also wake up and bring beauty into this world. So I think that's one of the habits, and that so much of the world, when you look at social media and you look at the news, it's focusing on the opposite of the negative, of the terrible. So what do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, well, the thing that comes to mind is the there's a tradition in the ancient Roman history when warriors would come back from battle, victory. When they came back from victory, there would be, I don't know if they were servants at the time, but something of that nature, who would whisper in their ears, "Momente more." Do you know what that means?
No.
That means you will die soon. Your day will come soon. And it's a constant reminder in the ancient Roman philosophy of Stoicism. Remind yourself you will die soon. So that means you should enjoy the day, the present moment.
Beautiful. So you're bringing to Stoicism, and Stoicism has tremendous wisdom, as do many of the religious movements, and talking about why death is such a incredibly powerful reminder in order to help us experience life. So we're coming to the end of this episode. We're going to do a part 2 that will start with this whole topic here and really delve into some of these powerful ancient tools that allow us, that remind us to live life in the fullest way possible. So AJ, thank you for being part of episode number 1, and we're looking forward to episode number 2. And for my listeners, thank you for tuning in to this podcast with my dear friend AJ Reisman on Habits of a Whole Heart. And we will now be beginning episode 2 shortly. Please tune in. Thank you again for listening to HMTV.